It all started in small-town Pennsylvania, a quiet, tucked-away place where the air smelled like cut grass and furnace oil, and life moved at the pace of rusted pickup trucks coasting down old country roads. That's where Danielle and I had built our life. 11 years of it, in fact. We were that seemingly ordinary couple, the kind you pass by at the grocery store and don't think twice about. 2 kids, a modest house we'd poured our sweat and weekends into building from scratch, and what I thought was a solid marriage. Not perfect, nothing ever is, but solid enough to make it through all the usual bumps and scrapes of life. Or so I thought. I was a man who worked with my hands, ran my HVAC business with pride, and came home every evening to dinner and bedtime stories. And for the longest time, I genuinely believed we were happy. Maybe not fireworks. Every night happy, but steady, dependable, grounded. But life has a cruel way of letting the truth drip out like a leaky faucet, each drop colder and more jarring than the last. It started subtle. Just little changes at first. Danielle stopped asking about my day. Her kisses at the door became automatic, like she was clocking in and out of a job. Dinners grew quieter. Her eyes stayed glued to her phone, and she'd spritz on perfumes I hadn't seen before, unfamiliar scents that clung to her skin long after she returned from her so-called work meetings. And I told myself not to jump to conclusions, because that's what marriage teaches you, right? Give them the benefit of the doubt. But the doubt didn't stay in the back seat for long. It crawled into the front, took the wheel, and refused to let me look away. I started noticing the time discrepancies, the vague excuses that didn't match up, the way she'd get defensive over harmless questions. Still, I tried to hold on, tried to believe that maybe it was stress or burnout or some midlife funk she was trying to ride out. But then came the moment everything shattered like a dropped wine glass on our kitchen tile, and I wasn't even trying to find it. It was late, and the kids had gone to bed after a long day of cartoons and bathtub wars. I was cleaning up the living room, and I figured I'd put on some music. Something mellow, maybe some Springsteen. Something to remind me of when life felt simpler. I reached over to her iPad sitting on the coffee table. Screen unlocked, music still playing. I tapped it, just trying to pause the playlist. That's it. But the moment I touched the screen, everything I hadn't been able to say for months screamed at me all at once. Messages, dozens of them, photos, calendar entries, notifications. And there he was, Brett. A personal trainer from across town, built like a Ken doll, maybe 10 years younger, and dumb as a box of hammers from what I could tell. But apparently that didn't matter. He was fun, spontaneous, and, according to Danielle, actually listens. I scrolled without meaning to, each swipe peeling away another piece of my marriage, each text a dagger disguised as flirtation. Her words didn't just cut, they gutted me. "He doesn't know I'm here," she'd written. "LOL, he thinks I'm at work." And there it was. My entire world turned inside out in a matter of minutes because of a swipe meant for music. I just sat there, staring at that screen like it had grown fangs. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall, the low hum of the dishwasher, and upstairs our kids snoring softly in their bunk beds, innocent and unaware. I felt hollow. Not angry yet. Not even sad. Just emptied out. Like I'd been scooped clean. I didn't storm into the bedroom or scream or wake her up and confront her right then. Number. That would have been too easy, because I knew something in that moment. I knew I'd only get one chance to make her feel what I was feeling. One opportunity to truly show her the depth of betrayal that had taken root in our home. And I wasn't going to waste it. I closed the iPad gently, placed it back on the coffee table like nothing had happened, and sat in the dark with my thoughts for hours, playing out every future move in my head like it was a game of chess and I was 5 moves ahead. I made a decision that night. Not just to leave her. No, that would come later. First, I wanted her to understand what it meant to be alone, to be blindsided, to be lied to by someone who looked you in the eye every morning and kissed your forehead goodnight. I wanted her to feel it, to live in it, to drown in it. So I smiled the next morning. I kissed her cheek and said good luck at yoga. I packed our kids' lunches and waved goodbye as she pulled out of the driveway, her gym bag tossed into the back seat like a flag marking enemy territory. And then I got to work. Not on our marriage, not on reconciliation. Number U started working on something far more important, making sure when the truth finally dropped on her, it would hit like a meteor, because the man she thought was too dull to notice, too simple to figure it out, too boring to fight back. He wasn't boring. He was watching, waiting, and building the case that would leave her standing in the ruins of the life she destroyed, while I walked away with every piece of it still intact. She thought I'd peaked at 38, number she hadn't even seen me rise yet. After that night, something inside me cracked open. Not like a clean break, but like slow fault lines spreading across a foundation I had once trusted with everything. I didn't confront Danielle, not because I was weak, not because I lacked the fire, but because I knew instinctively that if I wanted this to count, if I wanted her to feel the betrayal like I had to let her keep walking deeper into her illusion. Let her think she was getting away with it. Let her feel smug and clever. Let her underestimate me, just like she had been doing for months without even bothering to hide it anymore. I started noticing things I'd missed, because when your mind is no longer clouded by hope, you see everything for what it really is. The perfume she wore now wasn't for me. The late-night workouts? Nothing but poorly veiled rendezvous, and the way she'd come home with that satisfied glow, only to barely glance at me like I was a chair in the living room, useful, expected, and utterly invisible. I stopped blaming myself and I started collecting. She got sloppy, as cheaters always do when they think they've won. That's the thing about people like Danielle. They believe their little lies are too clever to unravel, too layered for someone like me to dissect. She forgot who she married. I wasn't some passive doormat, some clueless bumpkin too busy with HVAC calls and kids' soccer games to notice his wife becoming a ghost in her own home. I'm a man who built our life with my bare hands, who knows when the pressure in a pipe is off by a single degree, and I could damn well sense the pressure shift in my own marriage. So I played along. Every morning, I kissed her cheek. Like always, held her close just long enough to smell his cologne lingering on her jacket, and told her to have a good time at yoga. I told her the kids and I would be fine, that she deserved some time to focus on herself, and she bought it. God, she swallowed it whole like it was a love letter. But every smile I gave her was a smokescreen. Every polite nod and forced chuckle over breakfast was camouflage. Because behind the scenes, I was building my own little war room. I took the last few thousand in our joint savings account, the same one I had funded while she bounced checks for overpriced Pilates classes, and I hired a private investigator. Not some guy with a camera in his baseball cap. No, I found a former police detective who now made his living peeling back the rotten layers of suburban lies. And I handed him her schedule, her license plate, her gym address, and said, "Find the truth I already know." Within days, I had photos. Her walking into Brett's apartment wearing the dress I bought her for our anniversary. Her sitting on his lap in that grimy little pub on the east side, sipping wine like she hadn't once lectured me about heart health. Her texting while at the playground with our daughter, smiling down at her phone while our kids sat alone on a swing. It wasn't just betrayal. It was abandonment. She was gone already, long before I ever saw those texts. And knowing that made everything sharper, clearer, colder. I created a folder on my laptop called Insurance. Inside it, I stored every screenshot, every time-stamped image, every petty, degrading message she'd sent to Brett. They called me boring, a placeholder. Said I peaked at 38. That Brett was more fun, less serious, actually made her feel young. Meanwhile, I was the one up at 5 a.m. every day, chasing jobs to keep our mortgage paid, folding laundry at midnight while she worked late, and kissing our kids goodnight while she sent bikini selfies to a man who probably couldn't spell commitment. I read every word she typed to him, my hands shaking, my jaw clenched so tight I felt it in my molars. But I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't smash anything. No, I saved it all. Copied the files onto 2 drives, one in my safe, one hidden in my truck's toolbox. I'd learned the hard way that love is fragile, but preparation, that's unbreakable. And still, I waited. I smiled through dinners, carried the groceries in, watched her sip her wine across from me at the kitchen table with that smug little smile like she held the high ground. And she didn't know I had already raised the battlefield and set up camp at her back door. She thought she was clever. She thought I was blind. She had no idea I was studying every move, every lie, every tick of her clock, waiting for the moment she would feel as small and insignificant as she had made me. And I wasn't just planning an exit. I was planning a reckoning. I wanted her to feel the chill of the world she thought she'd built when the walls came down and no one was there to catch her fall. I was going to let her walk into the fire she lit herself and then watch her squirm when she realized no one was coming to put it out. The nights were the hardest, not because I missed her. I didn't, not really. But because I had to watch her tuck in our kids like nothing had changed. Like she was still their mother, still present, still the wife she pretended to be. And they didn't know. God, they didn't know. They just wanted bedtime stories and hugs and for everything to feel safe and whole. And I gave them that, even as my world burned quietly behind my smile. I would sit outside on the porch after they were asleep, staring out into the dark, feeling the weight of the future pressing on my chest like a freight train. But I didn't break. I didn't fold. I sharpened. And every night I whispered the same thing to myself, like a mantra, like a promise. Just wait. She's almost out of rope. Because when Danielle finally hit the end of that rope, when the lies were too tangled to unravel, when Brett proved himself the boy I knew he was, and when the world she thought she was building collapsed under the weight of her own ego, I would be the one standing in the doorway. Not to save her, not to catch her, but to lock it behind me as I walked away with everything she thought she could replace. My revenge wasn't going to be loud. It wasn't going to be fast. It was going to be meticulous, clean, permanent. And by the time she realized what she'd lost, it would be too late for sorry, too late for begging, too late for anything but silence. And silence, when it's earned, is the loudest thing in the world. The weekend of her sister's wedding arrived like a perfectly wrapped gift that Danielle had no idea was ticking. She'd been talking about it for weeks, rehearsing her lies so smoothly I almost had to respect the commitment to her charade. She said it was an out-of-town affair, no kids, too stuffy for them anyway, and with my work schedule, it was easier if she went alone. I nodded and told her to enjoy herself, and I meant it, just not for the reasons she thought. Because what she didn't know, what she couldn't have guessed in all her arrogant carelessness, was that I had already bought her plane ticket. I knew she wasn't going to a wedding. I knew Brett wasn't just tagging along. I knew the address of the hotel, the name on the fake itinerary she emailed to herself from her event planning Gmail, and I knew the very room number she thought would be the scene of her dirty little paradise. And I knew that because I had orchestrated it. Every last piece. It started 2 weeks before the trip. I'd guessed the password to her email, our dog's name, and our anniversary because, of course it was. Inside was everything. Flights to Miami, a hotel reservation, even a note to Brett saying she couldn't wait to feel the sun in him on her skin. It made my stomach turn, but I didn't close the tab. I opened another. I logged into the hotel's guest portal using her credentials. God, she was so careless. She hadn't even bothered to log out from our home Wi-Fi. I canceled the room reservation in Brett's name and booked a new one under a different account, one I created using a burner email and prepaid card. Same hotel, same weekend. But this suite had something special. Hidden cameras, ones that I paid a discreet, very professional third party to install 2 days before check-in. I didn't need graphic proof. I wasn't interested in catching them mid-act. No, I just wanted to watch the moment everything came apart. And I knew exactly how to light the fuse. A few days before their little getaway, I forwarded select screenshots from her phone, ones I'd saved to insurance, to the hotel's general manager. Nothing explicit, just suggestive enough to imply Danielle might be involved in, let's call it independent companionship services. I made it clear I was concerned about the hotel's reputation, said I was a concerned associate. Included her fake itinerary, and suggested she might be using their property for activities that would conflict with the hotel's brand image, corporate speak, just enough to make them nervous. Then I waited. And when Friday rolled around, I kissed Danielle goodbye on the front porch like the faithful husband she always assumed I'd remain. She laughed and told me not to burn the house down while she was gone. I smiled and told her to bring sunscreen. She flew first class naturally, used points I earned from business travel, of course, and she landed in Miami with her overpriced weekender bag, arm in arm with Brett, both of them glowing like two kids about to get away with sneaking out after curfew. What they didn't expect was the front desk denying them access to the room. What they didn't understand, as the manager spoke in hushed tones and glanced nervously at the computer screen, was that the suite they thought was theirs had been flagged. And then, revoked. Watching the security footage was like watching a sitcom. Danielle's expression twisted from confusion to outrage in a matter of seconds, her voice rising as she demanded to speak to someone in charge. Brett, for all his bravado and text messages, stood there slack-jawed, trying to hide behind his sunglasses while Danielle hissed at him to do something. The luggage was unceremoniously pushed to the sidewalk. The sun shined, the palm trees swayed, and I, sitting back at home with a cold beer in one hand and the live hotel feed on my laptop, watched her Miami fantasy melt into hot pavement. And just to make it sting a little more, the refund for the room didn't go back to her card. It went to mine. A burner visa I'd created just for this occasion, under the alias I used to rebook the suite. A refund I would later spend on a new lawnmower and a Lego set for our son. Something useful, something real, something for people who deserved it. Was it petty? Probably. But this wasn't about pettiness. This was about erosion. I didn't want to blow up her world in one dramatic explosion. I wanted to take it apart piece by piece, like peeling wallpaper in an old house. Quiet, steady, unavoidable. Because that's how she ruined mine. She didn't destroy me overnight. She chipped away at me with every lie, every half-hearted kiss, every fake girls' night that ended in someone else's bed. And now? Now it was my turn to let her feel what it's like to realize the floor beneath your feet isn't stable anymore. When she called me later that night, voice tight, fake sweet, telling me the wedding was lovely, but there'd been a few hiccups with the hotel, I kept my voice steady. Told her not to worry, told her I hoped she still had fun. I even asked if she'd tried that Cuban spot she mentioned. She laughed nervously, said they'd figured something out. I smiled at the wall and nodded. Of course you did, I thought. Of course you did. What she didn't realize was that, while she was stumbling through her half-baked lies, I had already begun the second phase of my plan. The foundation of our life, the house, the finances, the very things she assumed were too entangled to escape, were already being separated piece by piece behind her back. She thought I was just sitting at home with the kids. She had no idea I was also sitting in a lawyer's office, adjusting the structure of our accounts, pulling my name off anything that could drag me down with her, and moving half of our belongings into a storage unit registered in my name only. She thought she had time, thought she was clever. But time was the one thing she was running out of. And I was no longer the man she could lie to with mascara tears and whispered apologies. I wasn't her husband anymore, not in spirit, not in mind. And soon, not even on paper. That weekend was her gift to me, the perfect excuse to do what I needed without suspicion. While she toasted cocktails with a man who thought family was just a word on a gym brochure, I was erasing myself from the wreckage she hadn't yet noticed she caused. And when she came home, when she opened that front door expecting to slip back into the comfort of her dual lives, she was going to find out just how silent and brutal consequences can be. And the best part? She'd handed me everything I needed. All I did was rearrange the pieces. By the time Danielle got back from her wedding, the house was no longer hers. Not emotionally, not legally, not physically. I had spent those 2 days with the precision of a man doing open-heart surgery on his own life. Steady hands, cold focus, and a clear objective. Remove every trace of her control from the home we had built together. The home I had poured myself into while she paraded around in bikinis and lies. She had left expecting to come back to the same man folding laundry and reheating leftovers, expecting the same life to be waiting like a loyal dog at the door. But when she walked through that front door, flight-weary and sunburnt, dragging her cheap airport-wheeled suitcase behind her like a tale of arrogance. She stepped into something that looked like our home, but wasn't. Not anymore. The first thing she saw was the living room, emptied. The couch gone. Coffee table gone. Shelves stripped of the little trinkets we'd collected over the years. That picture of us in Myrtle Beach? Gone. The framed drawing our daughter made in preschool? Gone. The smell of home-cooked meals and kids' laughter replaced with the cold scent of bleach and absence. It wasn't a mess. It wasn't chaos. It was neat. Surgical. Like a house being staged for an open house, but not to invite anyone in. To show someone the exit. She didn't even get a chance to drop her bag. The envelope was waiting for her, front and center on the kitchen table, the only piece of furniture I left behind. Inside it was the evidence. Every text, every hotel confirmation, every false calendar invite. Photos of her giggling at restaurants with Brett while I was giving our son a bath. An itemized timeline of her lies, laid out in black and white like a prosecutor's opening statement. And at the bottom, a short note written in my cleanest penmanship. Since I peaked at 38, consider this the start of your descent. I'd timed it perfectly. Her flight was delayed just long enough for the process server I hired to meet her at the gate. Yes, the gate. Not the house. Not the mailbox. I paid extra to have her serve the separation papers the moment she thought she was safe back in her own state, her own city, her own domain. So while she was fumbling with her boarding pass and trying to locate her Uber, a woman in a blue blazer walked up, confirmed her name, and handed her a manila envelope with her full legal name on it, Danielle Marie Ellis. That's when her vacation really ended. The kids? They weren't there. I had taken them to my sister's place for the week, safe, happy, oblivious. I didn't want them anywhere near the bomb I was detonating. I wasn't just protecting them from the shouting I expected. I was protecting them from seeing their mother for what she really was. Because after everything, after all the text messages and empty lies, I still didn't want them to hate her. I wanted them to grow up without the weight of her decisions bearing down on their tiny shoulders. But I couldn't, and wouldn't, let her keep pretending. Not to them. Not to me. I left her just enough. One working bathroom, a week's worth of groceries in the fridge, a couple of towels, a half-used roll of toilet paper. Petty? Maybe, but necessary. Because when someone's built a throne out of lies, sometimes you have to make them sit on it. Alone, stripped bare, surrounded by silence and the smell of their own mess. She stood there in the middle of our gutted living room, spinning slowly like someone trying to wake from a nightmare, her lips moving in silent disbelief, phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline that wouldn't ring. Because I didn't answer. I wouldn't answer. I had said everything I needed to say in that envelope, and anything else she wanted, she could take up with her lawyer. That night, I checked the home security camera feed, not because I cared where she was or what she was doing, but because I wanted to see it. I wanted to watch her walk into a house she thought she ruled, only to find it stripped of everything she thought she controlled. I watched her pace, scream, throw her suitcase against the wall. She called Brett, twice. He didn't answer. Maybe he was busy. Maybe he was rethinking his life choices now that the fantasy was unraveling. Whatever the case, she was alone. And for the first time in years, I felt peace. Not revenge, not anger, peace. Like I'd finally come up for air after drowning in her bullshit for years. The final part will be released tomorrow at 9 p.m. Don't miss it.